Shalom, shalom. You are listening to Unapologetically Obedient, a podcast for women desiring to honor and obey God unapologetically. I am your host, Kelly Vonner, and you're listening to episode 8, and you shall love. Shalom, shalom, and welcome again to Unapologetically Obedient. Today, I am pulling from where the Father has been dealing with me, myself, and I. And I'll talk about where that started. Um, Today, we're just going to be in the Word, in the Word, in the Word, in the Word, in the Word. So, Matthew 11 in verse 1 says, "Now it came to pass when Yeshua finished commanding his 12 disciples that he departed from there to teach and to preach in their cities. And when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent two of his disciples and said to him, 'Are you the coming one, or do we look for another?' Yeshua answered and said to them, 'Go and tell John the things which you hear and see. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to him. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me.'" So that's where I started, on the works of Messiah, on the works of Christ. And then I was asking myself, well, what are good works? Because it tells us in the Gospels that we are supposed to let our light so shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify the Father in heaven. So, what are the good works? We see the works of Messiah, those are good. So, what good works must I do? So, I had to look it up. Works are any product accomplished by hand, art, industry, or mind. So the works of Messiah: go and tell what you see and hear. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who is not offended in me. And so then I went farther. Um, in order to do good works, we have to have the mind of Messiah. Because according to John 15:15, Yeshua reveals the Father's will to the disciples. And Yeshua speaks the Father's truth, according to John 8:40. So then I'm like, how or what thoughts must rule my mind in order to accomplish those works? What thoughts must rule my mind in order to accomplish good works? So it took me to Philippians. And I always say General Electric Power Company, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. But Philippians 4:8 um, instructs us on what to meditate on. So in 4:8, it says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are good, of a good report, if there's any virtue, if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you." The brain drives behavior, and good works require good thoughts. Good works require good thoughts. As I'm talking to myself, good works require good thoughts. So we meditate on the things that are true and noble and just and pure and lovely and of a good report and that are praiseworthy and are virtuous, because the brain drives behavior. So the things that I think on, the things that I meditate on, I can't have good works if I don't have good thoughts. If I don't have good thoughts. In Psalms 1 and 39, it talks about, David has a psalm talking about the Father's thoughts and his love towards us. In 139 and 7, it says, how precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. And when I wake, I am still with you. How precious are your thoughts towards me. The thoughts of me being your workmanship, the thoughts of me being your daughter, the thoughts of me being created in your image, the thoughts of me being created or in Yeshua Messiah to do good works, to do good works, to do good works. And those good works require good thoughts because the brain drives behavior. Now, I've been thinking about coming back to the podcast because we got to episode 7. And this is the first episode in maybe 6 months. In maybe 6 months. Um, and so I don't want to say pressure, but knowing that he's given me a voice, knowing that there's something to be said, there's always something to be said about God's glory and God's majesty and God's power and God's coming kingdom and God's righteousness and God's peace and God's love and God's love. So I'm all over the Bible. I'm going through different places. And yesterday during Torah study, we talked about love. And we talk about a lot of things in Torah study. But that was one of the things that hit home. Talking about the fruit of the Spirit, talking about love, talking about not being a resounding gong, and that we can move mountains, but if we don't have love, we are nothing. So the good works are good fruit. The good works are good fruit because the Father tells us in John through Yeshua Messiah, in John 15 and 1, it says, I am the vine and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. Excuse me. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. And as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. In verse 5, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather him and throw him into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit. So you will be my disciples. In verse 9, as the Father loved me, I also have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. And just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So, in order to abide in the love of God, we have to walk in obedience unapologetically. In order to abide in the love of God, because abiding in the love of God allows us to produce much fruit. Ephesians 5:9 talks about goodness, righteousness, and truth. Being full of the Spirit is fruit. In Romans, we are called to bear fruit to God. The fruit is not for us. The fruit is for others to glean from. The fruit is to bring him glory. The fruit is to glorify his name. But if my thoughts aren't right, and if my works don't align, and I'm not doing it in love, this is me talking to myself during this season. So I'm in John, I'm in Romans, I'm in Ephesians, and I keep going back to Psalms 139 and his thoughts towards me and him knowing all about me. Like him being acquainted with all of my ways. The Father understanding my thoughts from afar. The Father comprehending my path, knowing when I lie down, knowing when I rise up, and him being the one to search my heart, to try me and know every anxiety, to test and see if there is any wicked way in me, and to lead me in the way everlasting. So when we're asking the Father to know our hearts, to search our hearts, we're asking him Hebraically to search our minds, our thinking, our soul, the things that our conscience, what we reflect on, our understanding, our will. We're asking him to search our entire beings, everything that exists within us. So the title is and you shall love. And you shall love. And you shall love. In Exodus 34. In Exodus 34, when in 33 the Father said, I'll put you in a rock and I'll allow all my goodness, my glory to pass before you. In Exodus 34:5, it says, Now the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands and forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. That's who he is. So in Psalms 23, when it says, the Lord is my shepherd and I lack nothing, and he leads me beside still waters, and he allows me to rest, and he allows me to lie down, and he leads me he restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake, according to his reputation. And he has a reputation of being merciful and gracious and long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth and keeping mercy for thousands and forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. That's his reputation. That's who he is. That's who we serve. That's who we bear fruit to. That's who we love. That's who we call on. That's whose will we follow. That's who we bow down to in worship. But yet, we struggle to love. And we struggle, excuse me, my bad. I struggle to love. I struggle to obey. I don't stay focused on good thoughts, which means I'm not always bearing good fruit, which means I don't always have the mind of Messiah. But the commandment is, and you shall love, and you shall love, and you shall love. There's a book that I have started reading, and toxic trait of mine is to start a lot of stuff and not finish. But there's a book that I've started reading called The One Thing. And I reflect on that as I think about the season that we are in. And I'm realizing that the one thing has to be love. It has to be love. Why do you say that? So let's go to Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy 6. Deuteronomy 6. And we're going to be in verse 4. 4 and 5. And it says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's just verse 4. That you hear about the oneness of our God, the oneness of our Elohim, the oneness, the oneness, the oneness. In verse 5, it says, You shall love the Lord your God, v'ahavta, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And you shall love, and you shall love, and you shall love. Okay, so that brought me to Galatians, and it brought me to First Corinthians. Okay. Um, so we're going to turn there. In First Corinthians 13. We'll start in 1. It says, Though I speak with tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I have become a resounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. Because love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Love never fails. Love never fails. That's our one thing. We'll be known as disciples of Messiah, how we love. God is saying, and you shall love. Greatest commandments to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Words from the Master, the living flesh, the Word made flesh, the Word made flesh. So then in Galatians, in 16, chapter 5, verse 16, it says, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And I will not go into that because we have used it as a license to not walk in obedience. But we know that is a fallacy. That is alternative news because it doesn't align with John 15. You have to keep reading. So now the works of flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, decisions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, rivalries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I also told you in past time. Like I'm saying the same thing again, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. So the works of the flesh versus the fruit of the spirit. The works of the flesh versus the fruit of the spirit. But the fruit of the spirit is love. I know it doesn't stop there, but that's pretty much it in its entirety. Because love is joy, peace, long suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self control. What comes forth from me? What comes forth from me? Does what come does what comes forth from me equate to me walking in the spirit, producing the fruit of the spirit? Is love my byproduct? Is that what comes forth from me? So in verse 19, it says, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And in 22 and 23, it lists out the fruit of the Spirit and goes on to say, against such there is no law. So if you are doing these things, there's no Torah, there's no law against that. Yes, you should be loving. Yes, you should be joyful. Yes, you should rejoice in the truth. That's what it says. That's what love is. Love rejoices in the truth. Fruit of the Spirit is joy. Long suffering, it endures all things, believes all things, hopes all things. It's not provoked. Like everything that's listed in Galatians aligns with love that's listed in 1 Corinthians 13, which aligns with what the Father is saying when he says, hear, 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 O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love. In Hebrew, that's viahata. And you shall love. So you shall put others first. You shall think no evil. You shall suffer long. You shall rejoice in the truth. You shall bear all things. You shall be thoughtful. You shall not be easily provoked. You shall be humble and kind because you shall love. And we are called to abide in God's love as he leads us in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake, based on his reputation, based on his character, as stated in Exodus 34:6. And you shall love. So then I have to personally reflect. Am I walking in love right now? I personally have to do more check-ins with me. Not just end of the day check-ins, hourly check-ins. Hourly check-ins. Am I walking in love? Where can I make a pivot? Where can I make a correction? Where can I exhibit this fruit? What's my one thing? My one thing is love. My one thing is love. Because I want to be known as his disciple. I want to be known as a follower of Messiah. I want to be known as a daughter of Yah. I want his character, his way, his will, his peace to abide in me. In Psalms, it says, great peace have they that love thy law, and nothing causes them to stumble. So I can't walk in disobedience and experience the full peace of God. I have to walk in obedience, but not in a way that I'm just going through the motions and I'm a resounding gong, or I'm a clanging cymbal, or I'm moving spiritual mountains and yet empty. No, love is my one thing. Love has to be my one thing because it was his. And in Second Corinthians, when it talks in 5 and it talks about the reconciliation and that all things are of God. In verse 18, it says, now all things are of God who has reconciled us to himself through Yeshua Messiah and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, that God was in Yeshua reconciling the world to himself. Reconciling the world to himself. The world to himself. Why is that? Because he is the Lord, merciful and gracious, long suffering. That's love. Gracious, that's love. Merciful, that's love. Abounding in goodness and truth, that's love. Keeping mercy for thousands, that's love. Forgiving iniquity, that's love. Transgression, that's love. And sin, that's love. So that has to be my one thing because that's his whole thing. Every judgment, every precept, every commandment, every statute, it's love. It's love because he wants to be near. He wants us to be holy because he is lowly. That's love. That's love. That's who he is. So that has to be my one thing. It has to be my one thing. Via Hafta, and you show love. Thank you for being with me today as I process my own thoughts. And as it's like a welcome back, episode 8, to Unapologetically Obedient. So remember that wise women build. May the Father bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom.